Something very simple. For everyone here, and I think Opemi is making a very fundamental point. Anybody who studied the historical concept of governance, you understand governance is all about taxation. The very weapon you only have to run a country is about your fiscal tools availability, which is taxation. And if you study how it happened in America, in Europe, you find that they were also in this position before as well. And they did certain simple things. Now let me tell you, you can't transact any business from that place to this place without somebody in one local government, one town, or somebody collecting taxes from you.
Exactly.
There is a toll concept, and you can pay multiple. One local government comes, inland revenue comes. Whether you call it taxes or not, the people are already overstretched.
Thank you.
They are paying and they are paying. You may not capture it, that's your problem, but hold on. They are paying. And so to your answer, they don't have an agreement. Two of them will come after you. The law is also unclear. So let me tell you something. You may call it multiple taxation, you may call it double taxation. We know it as a settlement culture. If you don't deal with that concept entirely and allow governance to establish transparency in terms of how those who are there, Yemi, we know you. You're a good man. You're a decent man. So you are not defending government, and it's not about you. It is about our collective sovereign.
Let me point I was trying to go. The first part of taxes, I mean, that was the. I agree completely with Opeyemi that, I mean, if people perceive the system as corrupt, they don't want to. But I think that is largely those operating in the formal system. I don't really think the informal sector operators, the boy selling recharge cards or the of their corruption and so on, he is trying to survive. And the reason why we won't pay the tax is because he feels his income is extremely little and he's just trying to survive. And so I think your point relates more with the formal sector, the company, that he, like I said, 50% corporate income, personal income tax or corporate. He's thinking, why am I paying all this? But the real informal sector operators, this small woman in her store, is not, her reason for not wanting to pay tax problem, but his is more survival. His is more, look, I earn 50,000 naira a month. You want to remove 10,000 naira because you said I have to pay it. Yeah. After, like he said, I've paid like under how much is on all the tools. That's his issue. He's not really thinking about, I don't have enough. I think that is more of, in my opinion, the informal sector portion. I think that's more of his own problem.
And actually,
57% of the economy at last count is informal.
Okay, and then I'll just go around quickly and I'll get just one sentences just for recommendations because I know they really want to have recommendations for the authorities. And then after that, I'll open the floor to the public. So please, if you could still think of questions and then about the structure, not taxation, the structure of the economy and where the potential may lie. I heard Dr. Khaled speak about possibly the legalizations of things of parts of the hidden economy, like smuggling and things like that. So that's possibly a place where there's a loophole and that's tied to the structure of the economy. And
unemployment. So it's going to be a tough time. And Nigerians had better be made to understand.
Can I quickly add to that? I think I agree completely with the statement. It's irritating. I think the point that we're trying to make is that all those, I don't know whether you call them taxes or levies, mostly illegal. I think the idea is to make all these things formal, official, transparent. So it's not about for growth, for development, for anything. They are private. They are private. They are going to private pockets. And the point is, when you say formalize the informal sector, is to get rid of all those funny things and make them more formal, make them more transparent, make them clearer to the man operating in that sector. So that at the end of the day, you'll find that he'll probably pay a lot less. Going into government revenue for development. And right now, all that money is not. And that's what keeps it outside the control of government revenue. I think that's the point that we're trying to make.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you so much for your insights. And thank you. Nice.
Thank you very much, Madrid.
Thank you.
I was getting to okay.
The second panel will sit after this, just once we get our panelists off stage. Again, good afternoon. It's afternoon already. We'll go straight to the second panel while the press quickly sort out with it. Okay, so Ibuku will again moderate this second panel, which will start now.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. So for this second panel discussion about expanding, hello, sorry. We're getting started on the second panel discussion. So this second panel discussion is about expanding Nigeria's revenue in the same spirit. So for this second panel, I'll invite Mr. Austin Indiokwelu from DFID. Oh, not from DFID. Sorry. sorry. Thank you. At the middle is great, yes. And Taiwo. Sorry. Okay. I think some of our panelists are here in a personal capacity, so it's important to note that. Thank you. Wow, so we've already mostly, it's more than 50%.
Usually think about revenues. When we think of revenue, we're thinking of making more money. And increasing the revenue, we should look at it more from the point of having involves the petroleum subsidy. It's one of the worst things that Nigeria has held on to ignorantly. The labor union have inculcated the idea into the heads of every Nigerian that if the Nigerians, it's the payment of subsidy is one of the product of the subsidy we're paying. If we didn't pay subsidy and we watched the government carefully, all of those things will be corrected. I think more than anything else, we should start looking at the government as our personal purse and looking for ways in which we can get them to use what they have better. If you're a woman or a man, you get your salary, you prioritize. $150 billion naira a year to exist. Let every state support whoever they're sending to the federal government. If your state is buoyant, then you can buy a mansion in Abuja and live there. If your state is not buoyant, then get him a flat or get him to share a flat with one or two other people. If you're not going to come there and be a state for the betterment of the country, then stay home. So if you are not part of the people stealing, but you are condoning it and helping them spend it, we should have all of you arrested as well. So at this point, I think I'll just let somebody else share their views.
But since we're bouncing off, I can't leave you without asking about that report and the findings on NNPC, and also because there were claims made that PwC discredited its own report by saying that it didn't actually have the full cooperation of the organization. So please, if you could speak on that report, just because you can't get away from it, it's just not possible.
Here to speak about the report.
Yeah.
Because again, whenever you put anything in the public,
is, is just one aspect of the problem. The other issue that's most important to me is the issue of what do you do with the available revenue? How do you ensure that it's used in an efficient and in deliver results, which is what government is in there for. I'm happy about what Budget talked about in their infographics. How do we find the money for Buhari? During the campaign period, APC made a lot of campaigns. One issue that government needs to look at is the issue of the Treasury single accounts. There was a directive from the Federal Ministry of Finance for all government MDAs paid through the banks and automatically going to the TSA, but the CBN has come up with another architecture. It gives the government, to government, unlimited resources. Now, influential to me. For example, if I were the Minister for Works, now if the Ministry of Agriculture billions of naira, know that the few successfully.
And from the Lagos regulatory,
you are duplicating the structure for collection and therefore unnecessary overhead. So Nigeria needs to quickly look at those things. I was involved in a project for the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. And they did a very beautiful exercise, just asking their members in different states to tell them the taxes they paid. Do you know that in one particular state, members, this is not taxing the road yourself, it's almost impossible. And that's why the figure that Dr. Kyle gave about manufacturing sector, I wasn't surprised that everything was just food and beverage, nothing else other than that. So those are the fundamental issues that we need to address.
If I may add to that, and we're trying to look at the solutions. Again, some of these problems regarding the tax system, informal tax, talk about what is the right thing to do in order to fix our economy on huge Narendra Modi, or what's his name. And then the thing is that similarity in terms of challenge we have in Nigeria, in terms of informal sector, form those systems. And without doing that, you would not encourage business. And so the revenue base will not grow. And they talked about our tax ratio in terms of the volume of tax we pay. Now, we could actually reorganize this system in such a way that we can reduce taxes and then increase businesses, because here is a competitive business environment. For them to relax like the previous government relaxed are Nigerians. We need to formalize the way we engage with them from all angles. Like LCCI, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, all of those in business groups, and from the advocacy people like Budget and other CSOs do, holding government to account. Not just accounting for the resources we give them, but accounting for the way they manage things, especially the relation.
Getting the fact that we have, sorry, I've lost my thought. Saying about when we look at
the Nigerian grown more inefficient. It has become more corrupt. One of the biggest fears I have today is finding out that when the Buhari government set up the different reforms for downstream sector or anything to do with oil and gas, that I'm going to see some people formerly of the government that are going to show up in the private sector, whereby there is patronage. If you're a democratic government and some people helped you, the result of moving from one system to another has cost this government about $4.3 billion US dollars, of which in the last $6 or $7 billion that has been outstanding for over 5 years. Moved on to a system now where they are now companies that benefited from it, that, oh, we don't want the international companies to be doing all the business. Let's point 3 Nigerian companies. They were all affiliated with one part of the country, a particular person in government, a particular party that was ruling. It's all the same thing. So if the beneficiaries of all these local content things are linked to political patronage, we haven't moved. So we have to scrutinize. We shouldn't just look So what are we going to do about it? Are we just happy to see, oh, we can't pray anymore. It's time for work of cake. So there is a lot of scramble and a lot of crumb of it. If only we could sit back a little bit and grow to benefit from what the gains are. Thank you.
Thank you. And Austin, I really want to talk about, like, really bouncing off that and saying that, okay, there's these vested interests that are stopping, that enemies of the transparency and the efficiency that we seek in the economy. Is there anything we can build on that's already there, that we can build on to be able to
So the key challenge for government will be to focus on the issue of the cost of governance. It is extremely high currently. And one way of doing that is, like I mentioned, if you give me, I mentioned the treasury. The problem is that it started with applications here. We have ministerial directive for everybody to get on board. But it appears that along the line, they come against political pressure. One thing is to be a technocrat, wanting to do things the right way, but you have to contend with the political economy of change. That's what APC have to do. You have to contend with the political economy of change. They have the political will to actually drive the change. I talked about the police, I talked about the military and the universities and so on. I wouldn't simply bringing everybody on board that actors. The kind of money is going to see will be shocking to Nigerians. You will now discover that most of what we have been paying as salaries are actually non-existent people. Because the way it functions now is more like, okay, the system works like this, both at the state, the local government and federal level is, if I am in a position where I have direct access to controlling what is paid out, I have the belief that if ongoing IPs reforms around trying to get everybody on board the IPs is successfully done, we're going to discover that, just like one of the speakers in the first panel said, you know, we're talking about make efficient use of that money coming. It will still be the same like when we had the boom when it was 1510 and thereabout. Nothing really has changed. So what I see, the biggest challenge will be, what will make or mar the new administration will be, will they have the political will to actually push and bring about the change they are talking about? And to do that, one of the first areas we have to focus on is the budget. The recurrent capital balance is billion US dollars to fill that gap. And that with the current rate of spending on capital investment in our budget, it will take more than 100 years to actually achieve it. The current 2015 budget, the capital total allocation to the capital end is less than about 15%. It's less than 15% of it. That is allocation. We're not talking about actual. Now, Sheung did mention that even within the first, and out of it, the government have projected about 870 will be borrowed from within Nigeria, domestic borrowing. Out of that 870, we've already borrowed like 470 within the first 3-4 months. And it's not to push it into capital investment, but to pay salaries and overheads. You know, tell me how the hospitals can, how can we build more hospitals? How can we deliver more services, to the people, which is actually why government is existing. So challenges and
Wait.
Just to give substance to that, I was talking about the survey we conducted last year. If you look at it, the huge source of everything is corruption, transparency. And until we deal with it, we're not going anywhere. If the light bulb to shine, what to do with corruption.
But this session wanted to focus on generating the tax base, so growing the tax. So are you
House of Rep, the Senate to get certain things done.
like
Even
what?
in the oil and gas industry, there are a lot of things the executives can do with simple political will.
Like what exactly can they do to start those low-hanging fruit that need to be addressed that will give the government more moral authority to ask for more?
I don't see, of course, they promised after the election that they're going to pass the bill. Yeah, we don't see them passing that bill at the end of the day. But I think that bill needs to be covered. And certain things that doesn't really require the bill passed and done. I may not be able to pinpoint those to remember.
No, but that's yes.
That is done in Nigeria today goes through a middleman or a few middlemen. When the government says we're going to need 10 million liters of petrol in Nigeria, the government can go on a website, advertise it, have people post what they can offer and at what price, and through a tender system, buy the fuel. Alternatively, what Nigeria does is General XYZ goes to the president, somebody who supports the party goes bought their first private jet from profits. And I'm sure this is not the entire profit they made. So the middleman business, if the government says from now on, no middleman gets anything. When government wants something, there's a website. Kerosene is valued at 40 naira 90 kobo per liter. The bribe that goes to the person who helps you get the pro forma invoice is 30 naira per liter. They claim that Nigeria is using 11,000 liters of kerosene daily. Multiply 30 times 11,000 liters every day. That's how much is paid in bribes to government officials. $1 billion on a monthly basis. That's the kind of money we're losing. So if the government is looking for revenue, cut out the middleman. They need to start doing probes. They need to start probing government officials. Every single house in Bodilon, all those skyscrapers that are empty, who owns it? Where did they borrow the money from? They should bring them to book. The other thing that I can tell you that everybody will get jittery in the industry. It will stop. We need to get scapegoats and punish them. People are getting away with things and there's no punitive measure. And it's encouraging other people who aren't doing to think, oh, am I the fool in this game? I need to join the game. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I agree with that. Just to add a few low-hanging fruits to raise the tax base. Coming government will be to ensure that everybody in leadership position in government, from the president himself all the way to the state, to the National Assembly, State Assembly, government agencies, pay tax. And unfortunately, and people who are not ignorant don't have the right information to work with. So at the end of the day, we're more or less helpless. So if you're able to do that, and then you look at every area of taxation, all the tax heads, from company income tax to PPT to value-added tax to personal income tax, there are loads of issues with those things and why they will never work. At the moment, for have subsidiaries and have a holding company. I will not put it in Nigeria for the simple reason that once you have a holding company in Nigeria, it's saying to government, you know what, I'm here to do business for you. They tax you at the first level. When you declare dividend, they tax you again. You declare the dividend, they tax you again. At the end of the day, nobody wants to set up a business to pay. So you also have things like minimum tax. You have things like commencement rule. You start a new business. Everybody knows that the time that you are most vulnerable.
Cover that you don't understand what 80% of them do. Littering is one issue of those that is produced, but how do you stop the one that is being stolen? Because that is a drain, it's hemorrhaging the economy. Something has to be done to stop the theft of crude oil and theft of petroleum products. That's significant because, yes, when you talk about tax, a lot of people are burdened with tax already, but there are things that the government can do easily that will put more money in government, stopping the theft of crude. To be driven. Galaxy backbone, thank you very much. Galaxy backbone. The role of technology in reducing cost of transaction is also important.
And I just have one last question before we open the floor. We'll take 3 questions. There's one issue we haven't addressed. Themselves. I know at one point, I think there was a tech, and speaking of technology, I think there was a startup that got Nigerians to put their CVs online and pretending that every public office was open so that we could actually get the right talent for the job as opposed to patronage and people who were basically owed favors. So could we speak a bit about capacity and getting the right people in those positions?
If you ask me, to be honest, apart from politics, unfortunately, to be available, advertise it, and then shortlist candidates to be interviewed before they go to the National Assembly. Then the president will be submitting a list of tested technocrats that is able to run this country. Not just tested technocrats, but with the pedigree to do that and the experience to do that. We need to actually take in our best. We need to utilize our best. That's what 100 years back. So one, our appointment system needs to be changed completely, not on patronage anymore. I know it's going to be difficult, but we need to start somewhere, especially with some sensitive agencies. My outlook is this: those who head some sensitive agencies will determine if this government is serious or not. The kind of person, petroleum, works,
I think it's already a done deal. But how realistic is it to maybe even in our recommendations try to push for something that will be more merit-based?
I think there are some experience, just a second, that we experienced in some states, I won't mention names, where they negotiated some sensitive position and said, look, progress. You know, we can start from that. Then those set of people will need to reform the systems. I kept talking about reforming the system. It's an attitudinal thing. People want to grab. You know, payback time. Of course, I mean, there will be, but then there's the size of the payback so that it will gradually shrink. I mean, my colleagues from the private sector, do we have a GDP that is growing? And Yemikale tried to convince all of us that, well, it's not the size of the economy that determines poverty or employment and all of that. The US economy has been adding jobs every day. So how come ours is not adding jobs? Because we're not producing anything. We're not.
Is the reality. The reality is that you can't completely take away politics, but insist on having more of the substance than the political jobbers. Let's face it, the man came into power, but there are a lot of people around him that had electoral value, without which he wouldn't have won, no matter the fact that Nigerians saw him as a credible man, you know, who in fact is like we need to go and contest, or presidents who had, you know, in fact, this is the first time we have somebody that for more than 12, is it 12 or 15 years, he was ready to be president. So that's why Nigerians are saying, let's see what will happen. You know, this time, nobody forced him to be president. He's been ready for, at least he started running 2013. But at the same time, he couldn't probably have gotten there without those individuals that had electoral. If you saw the papers, if what the media reported is true, I think the route they are going is because I understand from all the states have been asked to send nominations, and not just sending nominations, and I'll pick the best out of that three. At the end of the day, we're not going to have 100% technocrats in power. You're still going to have politicians. But if it is clear, the message from the leadership is clear that, listen, it's not going to be business as usual. It is very critical. That position of the head of into my office and things like that. So people don't see any reason why they should pay tax. But if the message is clear that, listen, it's about, in fact, one other thing which I have to recommend, because I don't know whether I have another chance to do that, is that for this government to even commence, they need to first of all define, redefinition of government. What is governance about? Why does government exist? They have to define that. And that will now determine inherited all these structures, including the police. But we didn't reorganize these things to suit what we want. So it's more like a friend of mine called it, they are not deliberate, I've forgotten the exact word, but what he meant was that most of the agencies that exist now don't exist because environment and supervise. The other side provides services. Even the issue of providing services is not 100% government. There are services that government can provide. There are services that private sector can provide. This is just the definition of government. Then you now go break down, and by the time they're able to do this, they're now say, okay, which of the more than 800 MDs do we actually need? And then you begin to streamline them. That's one of the for this government.
To put in a word, how do we get this sector? Because I'm beginning to
look at Nollywood. We're having he had a friend who was educated.
End of 2000 to this moment, we are still by 2000 we are losing every 6 naira out of every 10 naira is lost to corruption. In every nation has made a promise, a firm promise, which I think civil society here should hold the government, on it. That one of the first things they will do within the first 100 days is to institute that public procurement council. It's very, very critical, so that the issue of contract awarding and approval is taken out of the Federal Executive Council, and the highly and competent body, take.
If it is not business or trading, the individuals who run those organizations by whatever names they are called, pastors, imams, overseers, have no exemptions in the law. And whatever they earn, including benefits. So you can say you're not collecting salary, but you are living in the mission house provided by the church. That's liable to tax. You fly business and taxes must be collected. For those organizations, if they venture out of what they're supposed to do and they start trading and they start doing business, you have a property, you let it out, you say you're a church, you pay tax on it. So I think Nigerians must accept what is in the law. If they don't like it, let's go and change the law. We can't have the law say one thing and then what we do is completely different. That is done centrally, where you are very too many powers to the federal government to decide who pays tax, to grant waivers to who is importing for something that is not their money. So if those states can just think about those things, first look inwards, reform your system, have information about who is supposed to pay tax, what taxes they need to pay, and then deal with the center as well. At the end of the day, it won't mean that all of them will be
building next door. So if you just go down through the lobby, just connect to the other door, you see you have a